Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Album Fight Club. Cody just hit his mic. I am Mike. No, it's fine. I am Mike, as always. Cody, as always, is here. Cody, charge.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about one of the greatest institutions in American heavy music and American music in general, in my opinion, the legendary The Chariot. Mike, do you mind if I go into a brief discussion internally about why The Chariot means so much to me?
Go for it, Cody.
So when Mike and I met, which was during we had met briefly working at a similar range of stores together through a coworker. But when Mike and I met for the first time and actually had a sit-down conversation, I was playing bass in a touring band called Empty. Empty was signed to a record label called Solid State. Mike, let me ask you a question. Who do you think the Chariot had put out 4 of their 5 records through?
I'm going to assume Solid State.
It was. And we took so much. I'm going to say we borrowed. Other people would say we stole. So much from the Chariot in terms of that drive and passion and unrelenting, honest appraisal of what intense music could be. This unrelenting passion of devastating riffs, of breakdowns that I wrote numerous times in my notes. This is just Concussion City. But also what I think is a really honest viewpoint of not letting go of what you claim as passion, not taking somebody else who might say, there's too much feedback here. There's too much noise going on. No, this is what once legendary singer Josh Goggin, who fronted Norma Jean, The Chariot, now does 68, once said as his viewpoint on punk music, which I think, listening to Wars and Rumors of Wars, is shockingly apparent. If you listen to how some of those songs are structured, it's just an updated version of what the Who did it live at Leeds. Make it loud. Make it devastatingly loud. Make it fast. But we are not coming into this for the money. We're coming into it because we feel some internal drive to create. So, Mike, I have to ask you a question as we start this. Mm-hmm. Mike had never listened to The Chariot.
Okay, can I just give my lead in prior?
Please do.
Because you're probably going to get into my perspective on all this. I just want to be abundantly clear here. This is definitely a Cody Passion episode, and I want Cody Passion episodes. But for anybody who potentially listens, who is a fan of The Chariot, or who adores this band and has been immersed in their music, or even for people who have never heard it, like me, this was literally, in this process of listening to these records for this episode, this was literally my first interaction with The Chariot, my first consummation of these records. I didn't even know this was a band. Now, how that happened, and I'm big into metal, I don't know, right? Bands sometimes get under your radar, and this is one of those examples. I've had no prior knowledge of this band. I was going into this completely blind, which for me, at least, as far as the episodes we've done, this is the first time where I've literally listened to nothing by a band we're covering, and then doing this is the first time So I'm coming into this as a blind sort of just person who's listened to these records. Whereas Cody's perspective is, and Cody can speak through this, but Cody's known this band. He's been extremely influenced by this band. So I think one thing that's interesting about this discourse is just the two completely opposite perspectives we have here. But go ahead.
And so it's actually funny that you said that. For those of you who don't know, Mike, maybe you didn't know this, The Chariot, I want to say up until their last record, which is called One Wing, were essentially a Christian band. They played Christian festivals. A lot of their lyrics, if you do deep dives, are about or influenced by the concept of the glory of God, the kingdom of heaven, keeping the path that is harder, but one that will bring you satisfaction, and one that in turn will allow you closer to that. And a lot of the time, if you don't sound like Skillet or Red, and maybe you're in a band that is shockingly intense, like Zayo, or like Under Oath, or like The Chariot, secular music doesn't get celebrated in the same way. You end up spending a lot of time getting kind of pushed from both ends of one end of the spectrum going, oh, wow, you guys are heavy for a Christian band. and then another band going, or another group of people going, wow, this is interesting that a Christian band is doing this. You guys should just not be secular, because you would succeed on like a Summer Slaughter, big tours like that. And so for a lot of people who might be listening to the Chariot for the first time, keep that underpinned, but don't let it influence your overall idea of the sound. Because to me, this does not sound like a Christian band, and I think that might be its greatest success.
Yeah, having never listened to them before, I had no sort of perception of that. It did at no point in listening to these records did it become clear to me, oh, they're Christian, they're secular, they're anything other than just like loud, aggressive, and very in your face, which is interesting for that to also be rooted in Christian perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and not to have the giant religious conversation, that's not what this podcast is about. I actually went through a bout of kind of losing my religion, as Michael Stipe would say, and through the Chariot, I rediscovered that process in my life, which was cool. I forget the verse, and I'll find it later, but there's a verse where it says, you celebrate the glory of God, not through quiet storm, but through like loud, joyous celebration. And I thought that was really interesting, listening to the Chariot and going, yeah, this shouldn't be a quiet thing, Mm-hmm. But Mike, before we start, I need to know, how do you feel
about this band?
Yeah.
It's interesting because anybody who knows me knows I love like heavy, intense music. But man, was this heavy and intense, dude? Like, holy shit! Like, and we'll get into it when we get into the songs, but like, not a single song here, except a few moments, which I wanted to point out, like "Let's Up in Any Way." It's always just like pummeling you. And as a fan of Slayer, I'm like, oh, I love, Rain and Blood. I got a lot of comparisons to Rain and Blood with these records. They're all 30 minutes in length, roughly. And they're just like, you press play and it's like getting beaten for like 30 minutes straight. However, I enjoyed this experience. And maybe I want to save this to the end, but is the Chariot something that I listened to put it in perspective? I listened to these records 3 times each, two by themselves. So listen to Wars twice, listen to Long Live twice. And then I did a back and back session. So the first track of Wars, first track of Live, second, third, and so on. So again, I've not heard these records hundreds of times. I've not heard them dozens of times. I've heard them literally 3 times in my life, all of which was in the last 2 weeks. Are they a band I see myself coming back to a lot? They're not. And I think what that boils down to is with my heavy music, I guess I just like it more like melodically driven. I think of bands like Between the Buried and Me. And I might throw these names out and Chariot fans will go like, ugh, right? But I think of bands also like Converge, which we saw live. And I think this has a lot of similarity to Converge, but even Converge has moments where they like slow it down. I think of Hell to Pay, right? That's the name of this. Yeah. Hell to Pay off of Jane Doe. It's like, that's a slow plodding song. And it feels like everything here is just fast, aggressive, and destruction on like an audible level. And that's really cool. Do I want that all the time? I don't think I do. So it's not to say that I didn't enjoy this. And in fact, there's some songs here that I want to talk about because I was really impressed by them. But as an overall product, I think that this band it's cool to have in the wheelhouse. It's cool to reference to and go back to maybe like a year from now. But it didn't sort of strike me in the way that Slayer did the first time I heard them, or Metallica did the first time I really consumed them, which they're not even similar bands really, other than that they play fast, aggressive music. But that's just my perspective as well, which again, I think difference is differentiated from your perspective, which just from what I'm gathering here, you're very much into this band.
I very much love the Chariot. Okay. So I say we put this to a pause real quick and we'll get back into this in a little bit. All right. Are you ready to start this?
Now remember, Cody, you're leading it. So.
All right. Round 1. We have Teach off of Wars and Rumors of Wars versus Long Live by Evan Perks. So I suppose in leading this, Teach, in my opinion, is a institutional, necessary listening to anybody who wants to get into more angular, aggressive, something that isn't say like Electric Callboy. You want to get into something that's a little gnarlier, has a little more teeth, but you don't want to get into a band like Nails. You want to find that midway between, say, like grindcore. You want to go from I'm into metal music, I like Slipknot, I like Red, I like things like that. You want to transition from Spirit Box into something a little gnarlier. Teach is a perfect song to start this off with. Immediately, like as Mike said, there is not a moment of rest in this song. Josh Scoggin opens up Red Flag screaming at the top of his lungs into just the most beautiful sound of chaos. The guitars are sliding. The drums are doing the drum thing. Josh Scoggin coming in as a beautiful lyricist. Don't let them sell you a cage. Don't bleed for blood that I've bled. I have thrown no kid to the wolves, so make your peace. But then something really interesting happens. You picture it as this like giant battle for control of audibility and passion. But then they pull it down into this section where it is just the guitar playing this like palm mute, and the drums are just waiting. And Josh Scoggin screams, "Victory is such a lonely word." He must do it about 10 times. And these drums are building. And the whole band is coming back in. And you can hear the sound of his feedback just ramping up. And he says, the Chariot is one of these bands that has a lot of lyrics that I say to myself on a daily basis for how unmistakably cool they are. He says, "I built my father's house. I built my father's house. I built my father's house." And then everybody drops out, just the sound of feedback, open strings ringing in a room full of amps dimed. But I refuse to breathe the breath of the failure. And immediately after that, Mike, is one of the coolest sounds that I've ever heard. Those panic chords, those chords with the drums at that pattern, that ba, 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 over, done. Anything that came before it in terms of what people could claim as like intense. Sure, there are intense things. Jane Doe came out 10 years before this. Immediately broken over the back, Bane style, by the sound of this. But then, on the adverse, you have Evan Perks, which is a song that I have many times had to bleed my voice through. Because for some reason, my bandmates and I like to cover this song, which has no melody. The adverse of what Teach does, where it starts and it captivates and then it pulls down into this explosion of tension. Evan Perks is this, it's like Sonny Liston punching you in the face. You get this feedback, iconic feedback. If you've ever listened to this song, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And Mike, it's just a B note. It's an open B the whole time. But the whole band it's like the release of aggression. And it's so cool. And lyrically, there's no let up here. It's like the sound of a black hole starting with these pauses and these breaths that happen between the whole band, barely only breathing my differences, my fight, it comes into the light, into the shadows that cannot exist without the light. Refer to the end of the page. Stay with us and we're standing alone. Come with us, stayed as a lonely ghost. Or break into death, shake my heart in your hands. This relationship burns. Disappointed? I know you are.
Yeah, that line's sick.
That line is insane. And he screams it 8 times. Each time, it sounds like you can tell that these songs were recorded together in a room, like 1 or 2 takes, because it just sounds like somebody grasping at this final moment of just like, if it goes 1 more second, I'm going to die, but I have to watch the second hand tick. Mike, how did you feel about these songs?
So what's interesting is I'm going to refer to my notes through this whole thing. So what I found interesting with Teach and Evan is that in Teach, they repeat the whole "victory is such a lonely word." And then they do the same thing as far as repeating a phrase in Evan with the thing you just quoted, which was disappointed I know you are. And for me, man, it hits harder for me in Evan.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that buildup in Teach. And I got to tell you something, as someone who's more akin to like Gent and, prog metal of the Between the Buried and Me standard. And I'm drawing blanks on examples here, but sometimes a band will build to something, especially in metal. And what I was expecting in this like sort of build was like a breakdown moment where what I'm used to is hearing like they come in with the boom, boom, dum, 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 and it's like, instead we just get these pounding quarter notes. And you already went off on it, but it was such an interesting moment for me that I was almost taken aback and had to rewind it. I was like, man, that's how they built to that. It was really fascinating and really cool because I'm so used to what that was not what I was used to, I should say.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. And again, with both these songs, if you're on the fence about this band and you may or may not like them, you'll know in the first 10 seconds. Like they don't let up. Like it's like they give their mission statement literally right as they open the door. But I kind of like that. I kind of like an album opening literally with them just starting and revving the engines at 100. Like I appreciate that. And I appreciate that they don't hide who they are. It's like right out of the gate. It's like, this is the band. If you don't like it, just get out. Which I'm sure many people have. Yeah, with Evan, it didn't, like, I like the drums in Evan, and I like the whole repetition of Disappointed I Know You Are. I think that moment's really cool, but that whole build-up in Teach really took me back. And by really took me back, I mean just like, I was shocked by it. It's not what I expected at all. And then to be shocked and then slowly afterwards, like, start smiling and being like, this is kind of cool. Like, I kind of like what they did here. Personally, I have to go Teach.
I agree. I think that Evan Perks works so well if you watch like old live videos. The rest of Long Live absolutely stands on its own musical quarter. But I think the beauty about Teach is, like you said, it opens that door, but then you get inside and then there is just that tension of what is going on and why are we just repeating this? And then when it finally gets to that ending, it is so memorable because it's not the chuggy, intense breakdown that you expected. It's like technical thing. It is a 1 and a 1, but it's so loud and it's so passionate. Like you can tell that they thought about it and they said, no, we're going to leave all that noise there. All of those panic chords and all that feedback has to ring true. But I agree. I think that Teach very much sits above Evan Perks.
And just a great both these songs are great opening statements for these albums. But man, does it really come in with Teach, where it's like, this is who the Chariot are. And as someone who's never heard of this band before, Teach was a really great way to like learn quickly what this band is and what they represent.
Yeah. I'm glad we both agree that Teach is sitting there.
Well, we only got 9 more matchups, so we'll see what happens.
We do. All right. Next, we're looking at Evolve versus The Audience. Mike, would you like to start this one off?
Yeah, sure. In listening to, especially in Evolve in particular, I can only imagine how insane these guys were live. Like, I don't know if you ever got the opportunity to see them live, because they broke up in 2011, was it?
Yeah.
I'm Wikipedia historian here. But obviously they were sort of like in an age where it was sort of before our time to actually like go see them. But man, I can only assume how insane they were live and how crazy they were. And Evolve is just another moment where you hear it and you go, man, this would be totally off the rails live. I'll actually save what I have to say about Evolve in a second. But with Audience, there are these a lot of the Chariot. And again, I don't want to piss people off, but there are moments in the Chariot where last time we were talking about Iron Maiden and you were talking specifically about getting Iron Maiden fatigue. I got to be honest, dude, there are times where the Chariot gives me the Chariot fatigue where I'm like, God, it's just not letting up. Oh my God. Luckily, and the thing I appreciate is that it's only 30 minutes. I don't know if I could stand like an hour and a half of the Chariot.
No, that's actually something I wanted to bring up. I'm glad this isn't like a health record or like a Godspeed You
Yeah,
record where it's an hour and 40 minutes of just
yeah.
crushing, just atomic level
But the
shrinking.
funny thing is that I can listen to Lift Your Skinny Fists the whole way through and be fine. This is like, I'm glad it ends at 30 minutes because another 30 minutes of this, I don't know if I could even, handle it. Um,
Yeah.
but in the audience, if I'm not mistaken, they have the sort of chorus moment, if you could even call it a chorus. There's this riff behind it. And I think it starts around the 30-second, 31, 32-second mark. It's like this really interesting riff that almost doesn't sound like it belongs there. It almost sounds like it's being pulled from like some other genre of metal and then being thrown into here, except when you hear it in the tandem of the whole song. And then suddenly I was going like, man, it's perfect in that pocket. It's perfect in that moment. Again, I wish I knew these songs better because I would be able to imitate it. But having only heard the
Yeah.
song 3 times, I can't imitate the riff. All I can say is I marked it down at the 32-second mark, so the listener can stop and listen to it. What that riff that starts there, I adored it, loved it. I wish there was like more of that, and a really sick ending to the audience too. Now, to go back to Evolve, here's sort of another like statement that is probably going to piss Chariot fans off. They really love their feedback, which you already talked about. Oh, I'm not really a fan of it. And I think it's cool in sparse moments. Like, Rage sometimes did feedback moments, and it's cool. I think it's cool when an album ends with feedback. Like, the end of the self-titled Rage record, their first record, where it's just like, it's like 30 seconds of them just breaking the instruments and then the feedback. It's like, it's really cool in that moment. But man, does it, like, so many times in this record does the feedback come through, and I'm just not really like totally on board with it. If it was used here and then 3 songs later it was used, cool. But like, man, it almost and this isn't the case, but it's used so often that it almost feels like it's on every single song. As someone who doesn't know these songs like the back of his hand, and Evolve was another moment where I was like, man, there's just so much feedback here. I wish there was something else. So for that, and because of that riff in the chorus quote unquote section of audience, I went audience here.
I respect that. I feel a very similar way. The thing that I like about Evolve, I think, is that, like I said earlier, it feels like a modern adaptation of that old Who principle. Like you listen to it and you think of what I guess we could call this metalcore, what metalcore turned into with bands like Atreyu, Bullet for My Valentine, where it's really formulaic. It's like, oh, here's a clean verse, here's a screamed chorus, here's a breakdown. You know what the breakdown sounds like if you've heard any of those songs before. When a band chooses to be so heavy, but pull back from almost like an old school, like Iggy and the Stooges kind of feel of like, yeah, this song is 7 notes, but damn, all 7 of them are good. I really, really like that about Evolve, and a lot of the rest of Wars and Rumors of Wars follows that. I appreciate that for their heaviness, they had this ability to throw these little like jokes in, like these little sections of levity. There's that moment in Evolve where the guitar does like the 4 notes up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like dun 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 dun, and it makes you smile because it's like, yeah, for as intense as this is, someone thought it would be fun just to be like, all right, hold on, throw that in there. That's cute. Man, I really, really love the section in the middle where that guitar is doing that feedback kind of glitch. And then when the band comes in, it's like what you said about the feedback, in my opinion, is it turns into a 6th member of this band, where you have these moments almost where it's so unrelenting that the only thing that you want to hear is silence. But instead of being gifted silence, you were gifted the sound of noise coming into itself. And I think that is really, really interesting to go, hey, something that a lot of bands dislike and that people fight, let's make it here. Let's just jam that guitar in front of that speaker and let's just get it a little louder. But I think Evolve kind of feels samey. It feels like a very structured song, and I love that. Where, in comparison to the audience, I wrote that in 2003, this would only be described as angular. I love the intro. I love the kind of like hushed vocals that happen in the beginning. But then when the band comes in, it's like they used Evan Perks almost as a way just to get your blood pumping. And then the audience is actually the first real hit of music. I always come back to this song in particular. It's unbelievable that they were able to translate intensity in this way. There's this section here that I have written down where I think he says, I never sing along to the beast. That's such a cool section. And then to end with his voice kind of like blowing out, fading out on that unsung, and then it's a do-do-do-do. For me, it is absolutely the audience taking the pick of this one.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, from there, Cody, I thought you were taking the lead here. From there, we get Need, right, versus Calvin McKenzie.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing, Cody. They do more feedback. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, so I see your perspective of the whole 6-member thing. Like, I sometimes feel that way with, very aggressive vocal technique in like heavier metal music. My parents, or just people who aren't really into metal, they're like, oh, I can't get past the vocals. And usually my response to that is just think of it like another instrument, just it like in the musical process. So I understand the, desire for feedback. And again, who am I? I'm just some guy who's heard this band 6 times at this point, but it's one of those things where it's like, are we going to keep going back to this bag of tricks? And, for me, they kind of do. However, one thing I do like about Need is that, I don't know if this is the case or not, but it feels like the fastest song up to this point.
It does. It is unbelievable how fast they're playing.
Yeah. And I was considering a point where I was like, maybe I can't even like cognitively consider this, because every song so far has been so aggressive that maybe it's just like melting my brain to where I think this is the fastest song and maybe it's not. But it's fast for sure. And a lot of this sort of feels like the evolution of punk, where it's just kind of like, this is what the Ramones eventually would become, or this is what you already mentioned, Iggy Pop. It's like, this is what eventually would lead to the Chariot, So that's cool. But then Calvin, I really like how this band approaches quarter note hits, because rather than like, you mentioned the chugging sort of breakdowns that a lot of bands would do in their like moments of build, chug, 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 chug. Instead, they always go like, man, quarter notes can do it for us, and just boom, bing, bing, boom, bing, and just like that sort of like approach to it. Because somehow, just doing single notes as opposed to like adding a lot of flavor, somehow it feels heavier that way than like.
It is so. Oh, it's so immensely heavy when you finally, because it's also the release from that like unrelenting noise. You got to think about like, in a way, it's like you're being teased the whole way. And then damn, the second they drop that ball, over. Bomb is exploding right now.
And it's funny because I think of seeing these guys live and the quarter note sections happen. I'm like, I don't know what I would do physically. Like, I can't, like, is moshing the correct way to go about this? But it's just quarter notes. Or is stomping the way to go? Or is it just like thrusting your fist with the, like, I don't know. But in the moment, I would probably feel something and be urged to do something. But again, that's the downfall of this, is that I will never be able to see this band live. So. Yeah. And again, I wish I could say more about these songs, but again, I've only heard them 3 times at this point. As far as my matchup is concerned, I went Calvin.
Yeah, I think so. I'll speak about Need first. It is hard pressed to imagine writing these songs. Like, some things you can hear, you hear The Passenger, you hear Unknown Pleasures by Joy Division. You can kind of figure out how they wrote these songs, whether it came from this into that and that into this. But listening to these songs, it's like, did all of you just wake up one day on the same wavelength and say, fuck it, we're going to knock it out in like 4 takes? Whole record's done in 4 takes for Wars and Rumors of Wars. Because it's like the 3 songs that start this record just pummel you. It's like you're getting mugged, man. It's like a gangland initiation. Just no stops, no pauses. The section here where he keeps saying "from the dead," from the dirt straight to the grave. He does it 3 times, and then he says, "Love is such a mighty long word." That is brilliant. It is unreal to me that Josh Scoggin does not get recognition as one of the greatest lyricists of the last 30 years. And it's the wild because they all feel so organic. They do this break in the middle where it's that feedback, and it's almost like being a kid and like ignoring when your dad says take out the trash. It's like, I'll get to that trash eventually, but you're going to have to deal with that rising frustration for another 5 minutes. I just love the way that, and maybe I'm a masochist, Mike. I just love the way that feedback sits directly on your ears. Like just that grind against it. So that way when a note finally comes back in, it's this great reprieve and this release. In turn, though, you get to Calvin McKenzie, and the feedback now is like being manipulated. It's like womp, 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 womp. Man, make no mistake, my voice is clear, and though it may be a subtle fret, Mayflower, sling low, because your love has such few regrets. They took the intensity from Wars and Rumors of Wars and that unrelenting drive, and they figured out a way to almost pull their feet off of the gas, but do something that continues that fury. When Josh, they start doing the claps, and Josh sings, "We cannot distinguish all of the world, so celebrate and sing along. It's a gift. It's where I belong." It's so good. The hammer-ons are so good, but then they do this thing where they become the catchiest band in the world, and they repeat that cycle where they pick a line and they just repeat it. They pick like 5 words and they just repeat it. And when he is screaming, "We are the crowd," I've always heard it as "We are the crown," but "We are the crowd." Oh my God, dude, God bless. I would be a menace. They would have to send an ambulance for me. That's how many people I would massacre in the Chariot pit. And then here's that sense of levity, right? They don't just punish you. Out of nowhere, there is this little ad jingle. What is the jingle? It's if you come visit for a lifetime or just a day, Atlanta. And then the second Atlanta does that hard cut back into Josh screaming, and you get the feedback. And it's like, for a brief second there, we had something that wasn't the Chariot. Holy Christ, that's so loud. And then the song fades out. Atlanta, Atlanta, that's my hometown. And it's such a perfect way to just add this little bit of like fun to it. Because, Mike, I've seen live videos of the Chariot. It was not safe. It was like a running of the bulls the entire time. And to have just this brief moment of like, maybe we should stop these kids getting massacred by each other. But for me, yes, very much Calvin McKenzie. I hear "We Are the Crowd" in my daily just like conscience. Just those notes, and then hard cut, crowd. So, man.
Yeah, they have the wherewithal to give, a slight reprieve to the people in the audience. And then they go, you know what? Fuck that. And then they get to impress in the city. And again, I thought Need was fast. And then Impress comes out of the gate. And again, I could just be having like mushroom mellow brain at this point, but Impress feels faster than Need. And it's like,
dude, it's like, it's so unbelievable that people made this happen, and it's like real. It's not like edited in. There's no trigger on the drums. Yep. Get in the room, record the drums this fast.
Yeah,
don't mess up.
And Impress, not to play the sort of like the pun, but Impress kind of impressed me in that one. It was like even faster than the last song. But 2, there's that section around the 30-second mark. And I think it's like guitar notes complementing like the repeated pattern. And it's another one of those moments. And then they isolate the guitar, right? And it's one of those moments where I should have said this earlier, but this whole band is impressive. I can't name any of them, who played what. But man, do they all give it their like 100% all the time. They're all in it, and especially the vocalist. But especially in this song, the guitar work on this song, really impressed. Just really like the sort of pattern they did in the song in terms of guitar. Did you want to speak to that specifically, Cody? Because you had sort of like a facial reaction.
Yeah. So I'm gonna save. Here comes Cody's gonna get real emotional in a minute, but the Impress is one of those songs to where I've said continuously, time and time again, that I prefer music that has the viewpoint of integrity came first. We had an idea and we made it happen. Like Spiderland by Slim. Man, sometimes sounds like a bad record. We made that happen. The first American football record, vocals ain't that good. There's no bass on it. We made it happen because we had an idea. We had a dream and we heard these songs in our head, recorded it. Impress is that thing for me. It's only like, it's 12 words. But that last section, and I think this might be what you're talking about, where it stops being intense and it turns into just these 16th note chords into the da 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 da, and then you have this beautiful plate reverb guitar that comes in as he screams "Lost Love" and the song fades out. And every time I hear it, it pulls a tear to my eye. You know? Mm-hmm. Please continue, Mike.
No, I was gonna. Can I just clarify one thing?
Yeah.
Did that first American football record not have bass?
No, it was a Telecaster tuned down to B. It was like tuned down like an octave down.
Wow. I love that record. I didn't even know that. Anyway, the American football. So then you get to just make sure the city. Yeah, okay, the city. Okay, so I literally wrote down "love the riff" and then in parentheses wrote "bang, bang, 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 bang." I don't know, man. Like again, I'm not well versed in these songs, so I don't know what I'm talking about there. I love the riff. I can say that much. But again, I think what's interesting about both these songs is the thing that impressed me the most with Impress and the City is the guitar work on both. The guitar work felt intricate and diverse on the City as much as it did on Impress. This was actually a tough one for me, but I guess in the moment I gave it to the City over Impress. I can't speak to why that is, unfortunately, because I don't really recall every moment of these songs, but according to Mike in the moment of listening to these back and back, he went with the City.
I respect that. All right, here we go. In my opinion, the City is, without a shadow of a doubt, and I will die on this fucking hill, is the single greatest American metalcore song ever recorded. Ever.
Are you saying it's Are you saying it's the best the Chariot song?
Yeah.
You're wrong. But
actually, hold on. No, it is, I think it is the best, but it is not my favorite. Those are two distinct, at least of these two records. But if we're talking about American metalcore as a genre, starting with like Zayo, and now we go up to like heavy dumb stuff, the real ass beat City, I think this stands alone as its triumphant moment as a genre.
Please explain.
Dude, okay. Mike, I will. First off, you have the guitar and the drums and the bass are absolutely locked in to this just intense rhythm. And Josh Scoggin, who's screaming this, man, he is yelling these words at a pace that is like unfucking believable. It is unbelievable to raise your voice to that level or to use that technique and say these words as fast as he is. And then you're only opening the book, which is a hard line to say without any vocal talent. You're only on the first line of what's going to take a little while. That's insane. That is insane. And then you've got John, the bass player, and Stevis. The Chariot was a revolving cast of musicians. You have John and Stevis who are screaming, "This is only a revolt," over and over again, right? Still playing their instruments at like, dude, Mach 5, blazing through this song. But then, and I'm gonna read this. Josh screams, "This is only a revolt," and then what becomes, in my opinion, one of the greatest set of lyrics ever written. And it could have been a Woody Guthrie song. It could have been a Phil Oakes song. It could have been a Dylan song. But this strange dude from Atlanta screamed his lungs out to say this. And I think the way that the music falls around these notes into this ending makes it the greatest metalcore song ever. Enough is enough because we cannot be late. Basically, you've been defined as unworthy of love, and I confess, I have placed my heart in the same address, but I paint with my words. You're free. Don't fear. This is just a revolt into the next town. Break. Calm rose in a violent wind. The only surrender tonight shall not be our own. They cannot escape, one if by land and two if by sea. I saved my money, but it can't save me, and maybe there is blood from the past, but that is not from me. They can take away one man, and they can take away his mic, but they can't take us all. No, they can't dig a hole the right size to fit all of our dreams. They can't bury me. They can't bury me. We can't hope that somebody else take our place. No, we cannot hope that somebody else take our place. May the history book read of all of our names, be it blood, be it ink, but at least we were free. This is only but a fraction of what I've got to say, and it must be said. It must be said if I leave this earth tonight. May it be said that I spoke my peace, and I spoke with the wrath of his grace. Calm rose, come violent wind. Oh, we stand hand in hand and we walk without fear. And this is a revolution into that chorus of O's. Over. Done. I could stage dive from the Market Commons to the fucking airport. That's how much that song makes me want to lose my mind. And it's so good because so much of heavy music is like, it's defeatist. It's defeatist, like listen to like, God bless Cannibal Corpse, they've made it this long, or listen to Napalm Death. Napalm Death's like, yo, keep working hard, man. Napalm Death's like, kill yourself, idiot. Okay, thanks, guys.
Yep.
But then you get to the Chariot, this band that is so unrelenting, passionate and heavy and honest in their appraisal of what they wanted to create in that moment and not worrying about the future or the past. That brief moment of every kid in that room together, sweating, hot, having no money, living in a van. You've been wearing the same pants for 6 weeks. Like, to have this attitude and to say, we stand hand in hand and we walk without fear because this is a revolution. I wrote here, this moved me so much re-listening to this song. I will not leave this place behind without making it a better place. This is the sound of love's eternal grasp on all of us for all of us. Long live the glory of our rebellion against the spirit of death. My final embrace will not be cold and alone, but surrounded with the warmth of 1,000 suns, singing their love as one. That is what this song makes you want to do. It makes you want to pick up your friend and go, hey man, we're both working in shit jobs, but tomorrow's a new day. And I think Impress and The City do this so well. So for me, this is very rare. This is a tie.
What? What? Cody, you just went off for like 5 minutes about The City. You can't, no ties, Cody, no ties.
It's The City.
Okay. I thought that was a bylaw we established in like the early stages of this podcast. We can't have ties. We have to come to decisions.
Metalcore, dude, heavy music, it's something I say all the time. Heavy music doesn't have to be this like downer, bummer ass shit, man. Yo, if you're going to go in the gym and you're going to crush 400 pounds on a squat rack, listen to the Chariot. It's easy. It's so easy. It should be clinical. It should be recommended in the books.
What's interesting here is that we're both on the same page so far, which is we both went Teach, and then the next 3 songs we both went Long Live. I don't know if that trend's going to continue, Cody, because then we get to Never. It's Never I or Never One.
Never I.
Never I versus Andy Sundwall. I'm saying that correctly.
Yes.
I'm just going to go back to my notes. I wrote that Never I felt like the most punk to me up to this moment in the album, which is interesting given how fast, given how aggressive, given how in your face it is. Something about Never I made me really feel the punk energy of the song. And I love the energy in this song. Something about it made it seem like more energetic, like just let's just do music, man. Let's just make noise, right? And sometimes I like that. Sometimes I like the idea of just like getting on stage and doing a Ramones song, like Blitzkrieg Bop. It's like, it's not saying anything moving, right? It's just a fun little song. Let's just make noise, dude. I think that might have been their approach here. But again, I'm not super well versed in everything the Chariot. Whereas with Andy, the City, I really liked the guitar patterns. And Andy, I really liked the drum patterns and the drum performance. And as a drummer, specifically this song was like another moment of like, man, this band, and you mentioned they're rotating musicians, but whoever was drumming on Long Live, they really brought it with this song. And I really like when bands do this, which not a lot of bands do this, but I like that they did this when drumming mimics the vocal pattern, where whatever they're doing, they're making their hit, like their heavy notes or their hits or their accents, I should say, the same as the vocal pattern. Really cool effect. I wish more bands would do that. And again, the drumming on this song is really cool. However, I actually went with Never I in this moment. And that might have been just because of the energy of it. Having not really known these musicians or know this band, it was a moment in which I really felt the energy come through. As opposed to Cody, the City didn't really make me feel like I need to stage dive off of Market Commons or any buildings. But Never I made me feel like I was in the crowd and sweating, and I'm sweating through my shirt and I'm moshing, and it's just punk attitude, man. I went Never I.
I think that's reasonable. I went Andy. But there is a section. So here's what happened with Never I. Perfect song. And the breakdown that happens right before you get to the whistling, I would have to pay 1,000 people's infirmary bills. It made me in the house so violent. I felt like a Kyle for a brief second. I was like, I'm gonna punch a hole in a wall, dude. Oh, why is this so good? And then I didn't.
Isn't that the worst when you get into music and you want to destroy things and you go, man, I got bills to pay though. I can't destroy all this stuff.
Yeah, it's like I rent here. I can't just be popping holes in the wall and put picture frames around it. But for me, the ending of Andy Sunwall, actually the whole song of Andy Sunwall, felt way more cohesive. But then you get that section where he screams, we were born from your ways. And by good God, it's so heavy. And it like pulled me in such a different direction. I think I would have gone with Never I if it wasn't for the whistling. If they had just ended the song with that breakdown, it would be a perfect song. And I like the whistling. But it's hard to transition from I just kicked the dude's jaw off to, oh man, now I'm in the Andy Griffith show. And the moment of levity does not work for me because I am the one causing the violence. I am the perpetrator in this instance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So you went with Never I, and I went with Andy.
The first divergent moment for us on this episode.
Very, very, very interesting.
We'll see if the trend continues. So we get Giveth versus the Earth. And with Giveth, love the opening riff. Love the build to the ending. Really love the sort of progression of the song. Which with punk sometimes, and I only say punk just because I feel like they have punk sensibilities, especially in something like Never I. Sometimes punk doesn't feel like it has progression. It has momentum, right? It pulsates, but it doesn't progress. Like I go back to Blitzkrieg Bop. It's the same thing for basically like 2.5, 3 minutes, right? Punk kind of does that, and that's fine. Punk can be that. But in this instance where there's the punk and the metal sensibilities, I think that Giveth is a great example of a song that has clear progression and a build towards moments, especially that build towards the end I really liked. Whereas with the Earth, immediately comes in, dude, and just does not fuck around. It just they've already kicked in like 15 doors, and the carpenters or whoever come in to replace the door, and the second it goes on the hinges, they just kick it in again.
It's just a picture of Ralph on the bus. That's all this record is just I'm in danger. Just
right. And you end a song and you go, And before you can even get your breath out, it starts up again.
Yep.
But then, and I think you know what I'm about to say, then we get to the middle of Earth. And I swear to God, Cody, I thought I was on a different record because it's like fucking doom metal out of nowhere. And I'm like, what is this? Like, obviously, this record and War have taken like moments in which they throw in these very like different sensibility, but like they just turn into Black Sabbath all of a sudden. I'm like, where am I? Did I take a right turn somewhere? Really cool, done well, really awesome. But I don't know, man. Apparently, Mike in the moment was more on Giveth. But now I'm looking at it and thinking about it, and I like that moment with doom metal was just so cool. I might change to Earth, given what you might say.
So here's my problem with Giveth, right? All right, this is going to sound insane. One of my favorite bands of all time is a band called Seisha, which is legitimate, not to be a purist, screamo music. It is a man screaming at the top of his lungs over like jazz chords and stuff like that. Giveth to me kind of felt like a song that they would have written to be played on the radio. It didn't feel like the Chariot. It felt like a hard rock band figuring out that you just can use gain and you can use feedback to your advantage. Where the structure of it I enjoyed, but at the same time, it just felt really safe. You know?
Yeah.
The last 5 songs on this have been pulling your teeth out with like a pair of pliers. And now it's like we're at the dentist. And it's like, no, just keep it up, man. I'm good. I'm here. Okay, we know what the deal is. We know the stake. Where, yeah, once you get to the Earth, oh my God, this is another one of these lines that I say to myself almost every day if I'm driving, if I get frustrated at work, or I'm just feeling like I'm like a silly, goofy mood. The line, "This is a loaded gun. This is a loaded question. When can you stop? When is perfection?" Maybe I'm already the one out. That is such a good line. It's so fucking good in the way that it fits in with the music. It comes in on this riff that it is like matching. And then they do, like you said, the argument that I utilize when people say that the Chariot start to have this, like, it's all kind of samey, especially when it comes to Long Live, is that it's very loud and it's very aggressive, but it does have these moments. Almost every song has a moment where it differentiates it. And with the Earth, yeah, dude, out of nowhere, someone put on like Holy Mountain by Sleep and said, all right, yeah, we're going to do this for 16 bars, man. And it just brings such a smile to my face because in the moment, they could have done the tried and true metalcore thing. They could have done the hardcore thing. Let's make this just like a dun breakdown. No, man, we're all going to turn on fuzz pedals right now. And it's going to sound cool. And it's going to sound lo-fi. And it's going to be a nice breakaway from the rest of the noise that we've been hearing for the whole record. And I think that's one of his successes, especially as growing as a musician. But as the Chariot, they got older. They realized we don't have to follow any rule because we're the one making the rules. That's it. I think that the Earth is a better song because it tries and it adds something that could have been misunderstood, but instead turns into a really cool section where you go, I could just bang my head to this,
Yeah, it was a nice moment of sort of levity's the wrong word, but sort of like differentiating the sound. A cool moment of like, I was not expecting this, which I think also plays into the next track, at least on War, Abandon versus David De La Hoz, I'm going to guess, or De La Hoz. Okay. Bro, I finally get the moment where I can just exhale for once. We get Abandon, and I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, Jesus. It felt to me, first couple, I guess it was a minute, maybe none of these songs are super long, so it had to be like the first minute and a half, where it's just like guitar. It's like doom guitar. Felt like Swans. Yeah. Felt like Godspeed. It very much felt like Swans without Michael Gira singing. Complete doom vibes. And honestly, I love the quietness of it. I just love the subtlety of like, hey, we just gave you 6 tracks of punching you in the teeth. You know what? here's a moment to pick them up. Here's a moment to pick your teeth up off the ground and like get them back in your mouth, and then later we'll punch them back in. But for now, we'll give you this breath of fresh air. And it was, I'm telling you, a breath of fresh air. Really liked it. David, it was cool, but it was just a lot more aggression, I will say. Again, with those quarter notes, love the power of just quarter note hits and just everybody hitting the quarter note at the same time. And I want to give it to David because of that fucking vocal change he does at the minute mark where he just like gets, is this the right song I'm thinking of?
Yeah, that's Dan Smith from Listener.
Where it's just like, it sort of sounds like twangy and country. It's probably, it's just like, what the hell are we doing here? But I loved it. Like, it was one of those stupid ass moments where like I was grinning. I'm like, oh my God, like what is this? I want to give the edge to David just because of that, but Abandon really like settled me down, calmed me down. I like that it's there. I like that it's present. Whereas Dave is just a lot more of what we've already done. It is great. It's still going great. It's just like Abandon was that breath of fresh air I was looking for. So I have to go Abandon.
I really like the first 40 seconds of Abandon. I think the song would have been so much better. I agree. It has a Godspeed feel. You get these like really beautiful, lovely, like reverb soaked cowboy chords. And it's like, where did this come from? And then you start screaming and it's like, you could have done something way cooler.
Yeah. Well,
than screamed these. And then,
it feels expected at this point that like I have this moment. I'm like, oh, there he is again.
Yeah, there's Josh. And I like that the song actually picks up. I like that it's not just all quiet, drony, doomy stuff. And at the end, it gets real big and turns into Chariot, and that's cool. David De La Hoz.
I don't know.
Mike, this is going to shock you. This is my favorite Chariot song.
Okay. Interesting. Now what? It has to be because of that vocal part, right?
So it's not only the vocal part, it is the way that the whole band comes in. They're doing these slides that don't make any sense. Like if you tried to play the song, it doesn't make any sense because it's just these slides down. And it's like, hold on though, that's really sick, because then everybody drops out and they do the teach thing, but bigger, where people start clapping, their stomps and all those things. And then Dan Smith from Listener comes in and goes on this, I would only give like a diatribe.
Yeah.
He just loses his mind. And his voice is hilarious. And it's just this perfect little bit of happiness. And then the band's ramping up a little bit, and it's good. But then, holy Jesus, Josh is across the hall in a bathroom somewhere, screaming at the top of his lungs, fix, brain fix, brain fix, brain fix. And dude, they are tuned down to double drop B when the whole band comes back in, and it sounds like a building collapsing. It hits so unbelievably hard. It's like blowing your car speakers out level of devastating. And you just don't expect it, because you just heard Conway Twitty run down onto this sweat and fever dream infused madness. And then, oh my God, the band comes back in furious, almost just so heavy you feel like you could levitate in it. You feel like you've walked into a different pressure. And every single time I listen to this song, it gets to the Dan part, and I'm like, man, this makes me so happy. And then Josh starts screaming, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm about to witness Fat Man go off. I'm about to have the audio equivalent of 9 bass amps exploding at once. And it just moves me every single time, because it's not like they did the down tune and then took all the feedback out and took all of the string noise. You get this double palm mute that happens. It's like, oh, God bless, dude. The Chariot should be happy, because if this song happened today, there would be straight up. They would be like arrested for inciting riots. That's how heavy it gets. And I think that's what does it.
So you're going with Abandon? No, of course.
No, of course. Sorry.
No, I was joking. Cody, do you even like Wars in Rumors of Wars?
I do,
because according to the list, you don't. You've been dick riding Long Live pretty hard here.
Okay.
No, I'm joking.
Yeah, but hold on. Let me say this. I think Long Live is the perfect attempt at making chaos, at truly translating, but not making it like unreliable. It's so well done, man. And it's like every single song has, like I said, they have a moment. They have these like little glimpses of like fun, but then it'll just like flip its head. It's just like the snake turns around. It's like, ha, idiot, gotcha. Yeah, and it's so good. I love Wars, but I think Long Live, sits so far above anything that even came out at that time. Mm-hmm. And it's a shame. It's a shame that they got, in a way, like denigrated because they were a secular band.
Yeah.
Because all of this should have been instead of I don't know, whatever was popular at the time in like the heavy world, you know.
So here is where I started getting really fatigued. We get to Daggers versus the Heavens, and you know, Cody, you can speak to this more probably because this is 3 and 3 for me listening to these songs. But this is a moment where I'm like, God, like I know it's only 30 minutes. And at this point, I think we're at like the 23, 24 minute mark for both these records. I'm like, how has it only been 24 minutes? I feel like I've been at this for an hour. I really don't have a lot, unfortunately, to say about these songs. Daggers, I put down that I really like what the vocalist is doing. Like, again, he's putting everything into it. And even so much as like you can hear him gasping for like air. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, I love when they keep that. You know, some producers might be like, oh, we got to get rid of that. We can't have the vocalist not be perfect. And it's like, no, dude, just like get the reality of him. Get the reality of him putting his everything into it. And I love that. Heavens, the opening, again, it's strange, but it gave me like a sort of different artist. I thought I was listening to somebody different. It didn't feel like the Chariot anymore. It kind of felt like a late 2000s, early 2010s, like, I don't have a good example, but something about it made me feel like A Day to Remember. Just like the clapping and like the boo, like that. It felt like a stadium rock anthem. Again, I could be totally off base with this, but that's just what I felt. And, you know, they do the audio glitching vocal thing. They don't do it a lot. And it sort of has the same play of feedback for me where, you know, them doing it that one time, I'm like, cool. You know, just don't overdo it. And they didn't. The feedback, I think they did. Again, I don't really have much to say here. I kind of just went with the Heavens in this case. It just did a little bit more for me than Daggers did.
I think Daggers is a very good song, but it sounds what did I write about here? It sounds kind of phoned in. So this was actually the song that they used as one of the like main singles to push this record. Yeah, and it doesn't have the right amount of intensity. It feels like they kind of started letting up for a second, and it's like, but the drive is there. It just sounds different, and I can't really describe why. I like it. I think it's a very serviceable song. But yeah, I guess I am dick riding Long Live. Holy shit, dude. You get to the Heavens and you have that very cool, it's like Death Grips. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like a Death Grips song. You got the starting and the clapping. You telling me it doesn't sound like a Death Grips song?
Okay, here's where I'm gonna play my fan card. I'm a mega fan of Death Grips, and I never got Death Grips vibes.
No, maybe I'm thinking maybe Show Me the Body or something like that, like one of those interesting, like, you know, they do something unique. And then, but man, the clapping's so good. I think it's interesting that this feels like the most serious song, and then it turns into the goofiest song. I like the flip on that. Because you got Josh saying, well, if this is a revolution, grab the kids, grab the neighbors alike. If I had a gun for every time we spoke, I could arm the whole world and take it for ransom. Dear Lord, would you rescue me? And then, Mike, what do? You think the Chariot goes into like some goofy breakdown? No, dude. No. They turn into like 38 special on like crack. When you get to that second section past like the real big da 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 da, that riff when he starts singing we cannot delete it just because of the trend tossed about by the waves of the sea. We cannot delete it just because of the fight that is here. When we say it, we mean it. We cannot delete it. We are not here because coattails reign before love. Cannot delete it just because of the truth that reigns and shakes inside. And then you have the claps. Ah, it's so good. It's so fucking just like unbelievably fun. And I think that's exactly what this song needed. If it would have done, say, the ending to like David De La Haas, where it gets into a real heavy, chunky, it's like the sound of the like an implosion. No, but the fact that it turns almost into like circus music, I really like that. It makes me feel like I'm at a circus, like I'm at a county fair, except instead of eating corn dogs and funnel cake, I'm watching the Chariot and getting kicked in the head for 40 minutes to an hour.
A pleasant experience, I'm sure.
Shockingly pleasant. That's why I stand to the side.
Yeah. Cody, a lot of this is going to have to be you at this point. I'm sorry. We get to Oversee and Robert, and again, it's just like one thing that's shocking about Oversee is that it's literally like 45 seconds. They go in, they go out, and because of that, I'm not really sure what the point was. Unfortunately,
I was going to ask if you wanted to count it as a song, but the thing about this is like the record's 30 minutes. Yeah. If we take one and we remove a whole like a minute from it, it's like, well, it's the point of the mashup.
And I mean, it counted it as a track, so I mean, there's fair game to say it should be here and be counted. What's interesting is it almost feels like they do a rewind effect, like the which that's cool. But again, it's only 45 seconds. Like I don't know what I'm really supposed to elaborate on. And in the case of Robert, I literally wrote down in my notes, starting to really feel Chariot fatigue. It's blending together for me. And yet I'm going to give it the edge only because it's longer than 45 seconds.
Yeah. What I like about Overseas is, okay, you want to talk about the, like, it seems like they're playing fast. Dude, they open with those blast beats. They must have played, like, it must have been 20 hits in 4 seconds. It was absurd. I mean, people used to say that, like, Raining Blood was like Mach 5, right? Yeah. And then you listen to this and it's like, whoa. We're going speed here now. And then, yeah, they do like the reverse drums in the bass. I like the sound of the bass without any distortion sliding back up the fretboard. I think that is a very, very cool trick, which would be later used on a 68 record. So I really appreciate that. I honestly, dude, kind of glad that this song's only 47 seconds. Because it's like, yeah, listening to these both back to back, I put them in a playlist where it's just one after the other, and that was my primary way of listening. Jesus. At one point, I thought I had just like lost all of my hearing. Yep. But then you get to Robert Rios, which probably my least favorite song on Long Live. Cool intro. I like how it's kind of more like lighter. It's a little jovial. It's got a little bit of like, it feels like they took a little bit of distortion off for a second to do those really big chords and everything like that. But then it goes into this section where it is this like dimed fuzz bass that is, it sits so high in the mix that like almost all of the guitar leaves. And he says, in the land of 1,000 fathers, she was born on the 4th of July. Well, that doesn't mean she was made in America because she was gone in the blink of an eye. She belongs, but she acts like a stranger. She collapsed, but she ain't free. And then he says in the most like backwoods Southern way, like I live in the backwoods in a bayou in Mississippi. His voice, I am my only devil, and they'll believe what they want to believe. And dude, it makes me smile every time I hear it because I'm like, good for you. You had a little bit of fun here, didn't you? But I will agree. And I could see the problem of somebody who hasn't listened to something like that is this like unbridled in its approach to intensity. It is draining. It's like listening to the Nails catalog front to back, you know?
Yep.
You think you're just sticking your head in sand. It's just like, holy shit, it's so loud and it won't stop. So, Mike, we have in my opinion, it goes to Robert.
Okay. Just be clear.
Yeah, just be clear. So we reached the end of the record, dude.
Okay, Cody, I said that you're going to lead this episode, you're going to lead the whole thing, and I kind of felt like I've been leading, but that's okay. But I want to take this, and I'll tell you why. In the case of both these records, we get to this point where I'm just like, we get to Overseas, we get to Robert. I'm just like, God, I don't know how much more of this I can take. At least there's only one more song. Bro, as somebody who is not a fan of this, or rather, I should say, as not a super fan, has not listened to they saved their best shit for the last two songs. So I'm amazed when you said that, The City, it was The City, right? Was the best, and David was your favorite.
My favorite.
Yo, like Alabama and The King. Okay, let me start with what I will say is I don't know if this was intentional, but man, did they really, at least in my perspective, they saved their best stuff for last. And luckily, being only 30 minutes long, I mean, at the 25-minute mark, I'm like, man, I'm getting really fatigued. And then it just like perked up in like the best way. You get to Alabama, you got that really interesting intro. And it's that kind of thing where I go, are they really going to run with this sound the whole way? Nope. Just like totally abandon it. And like the middle portion is so goddamn heavy. Like it's planetary devastation heavy. Like it's literally the forest are like getting shocked wave and the waves are crashing, like everything. It's like moons colliding. So the middle section where it's, and again, in my notes, I put, middle section heavy. So I assume that's like the heaviest part of the song. And I'm referring to that moment when I say that it's probably my favorite moment on the entire record is that middle section. That's just like atom bombs dropping. And then it almost seems like an atom bomb is dropped. And like the outro is just like the toxic aftermath, which I think they use feedback or distortion from what I remember. The sort of distortion of the ending really makes it feel like an ending, where it's the kind of thing where I feel this sort of like ending. And I know I just said ending like 5 times, but it feels like a moment in which we really conclude everything that's going on here. We bring it all to a close. And I hear that and I go like, well, that's easily my favorite song. Like there's nothing that's going to top that. Oh no. The King comes in. And the King comes in and goes, hold my beer, my dude. Yo, favorite song by this. Now, again, I've only heard these 2 records, but by far, in a way, not even close, this is my favorite song. This, honestly, it feels like a culmination moment. Like, I don't know this band very well. I don't know their progression. I don't know their journey, but it feels like everything they ever worked on led up to this song. Like, that's how big it felt to me. That's how epic it felt to me. That's how cohesive it felt to me. The riff in the early portions are fantastic. Love the sort of riff in the early set. The trumpets, they start throwing trumpets in there, I think. At least I think
the trumpets come in, and every time I hear it, I want to stand up. It's so, you talk about cinematic, dude. That is exact. I think of like a bunch of cowboys riding into camp, knowing that.
Literally in my notes, I say the gallop section in the middle is sick, right? That sort of, like just awesome. Just really, really love that moment. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, like I said, as an outsider to this band, this fit, like I felt this. This is a song I'll revisit often. Like the entirety of these records, I'm sorry to say, probably not, right? I'm probably not going to revisit these whole records, but The King in particular, I will revisit. This is easily my favorite song out of these 2 records and easily takes the win for me.
Yeah, I respect that. I think I feel a very similar way to you. In my opinion, if they would have left off this record, this would have been the perfect song to leave on. Like I said, there's no better way to describe this song than a bunch of cowboys having to ride into like an outlaw camp. and it's like we're outgunned and outnumbered, but man, we're gonna have to do this
Yep.
thing. And dude, it's just so. Every song on this record, in my opinion, on Long Live, has a moment of time to breathe. This song is like, dude, it's like the final fight in Punch Out. It's like, yeah, all right, no, it's just Mike Tyson now. There's no fun here. It's just intense. And to end that fake out ending, and then you have Josh screaming, but at an intensity that I can only describe as like your final grasp for life. He is holding on to every single moment of this. And it's insane because you hear him start the whole record. You hear him, he pull these breaths in, whether they're a stylistic choice, he'll breathe in, you'll hear a big or something like that. And on this, it's almost like you can watch him get closer to passing out. You can hear it because he just goes and goes. And then you think he's stopping, and it's like, no, he still has more to say. To end a record that, in my opinion, should get so much more respect and reverence, to end with "This Language Is Dead" into feedback, it's so unbelievably perfect. And Miss Montgomery, Alabama is a very, very good song, and it does get like diabolically heavy. But man, just the passion, the uniqueness of throwing in horns on a record that is at this point has been nothing but the loudest fucking noises you've ever heard in your life, pummeling you into these beautiful sections, these crescendos, but never once dropping off on the intensity. And the second that they do, and you go, oh man, maybe that's how they end the record. We got another minute. Say your prayers and eat your vitamins, dude. Hulkster's coming for you. Like, over. And yeah, I very much agree with you, Mike.
Well, in album Fight Club history making right here, Cody, you did a 9-1 in the matchup. 9 for Long Live and a singular 1 for Wars and Rumors of Wars.
I did.
For my part, I gave 3 to Wars and 7 to Long Live. I'll just say my piece here and give you the floor to close out. I totally get why this band is adored, popular, etc. All the buzzwords you want to throw around. For me, it is a little too, like, to consume it all in one go. It's not a little, it's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
I can see myself revisiting this and being like, yeah, I'm willing to swallow this for 30 minutes and take it back in, but this is not something I would revisit every single week. But certain songs here, especially The King, I will definitely revisit. I enjoyed this band. I enjoyed listening to it, but it's not the kind of thing that I enjoyed so much that I would see myself putting this in the rotation all the time. But Cody, this is definitely your pick. This is your band. This is your episode. So you take the floor to close out.
Well, first off, Mike, I very much would like to say thank you. For those of you who don't know, listeners at home, Mike was the one who presented the idea of this podcast. And Mike typically is the one who presents the matchups and in the formats, whether it be we're adding or cutting a song, we're going to add things together. And for Mike to take a chance and to experience something that means a lot to me as a person, I'm very thankful. I look forward to making you listen to more music that you haven't heard and hoping that this expands your palette in a way to where maybe in a year, if for some reason you decide to get into like weightlifting, I don't know why you would, but if you decide to get in like weightlifting, you're like, oh shit, hold on. I'm just going to listen to the Chariot and drink one C4. And then I'm going to lift a squat rack through the ceiling. I also utilize the Chariot as a means of inspiration, especially sections like The City. As somebody who fluctuates with mental health, I find that those moments of listening to heavy music, but that's not denigrating my abilities as a person, but instead inspiring myself to lift me and others up. I enjoy that. I work a relatively soul-crushing job. And sometimes on the way to work, when you don't want to clock in, you got to go make the donuts or whatever, figuratively. It's nice to listen to something that says, hey, we walk hand in hand, but we stand without fear, I do want to do something that is unique to this. So for the listener who has made it this far, I did consult the Facebook page Long Live, which is the Chariot's long-standing fan group, who I utilized to poll which records we should do. We then came to the determination that we should do Long Live and Wars and Rumors of Wars, because I believe that they are their most accessible records. Mike, this might shock you, they were gnarlier and they were heavier. This is their most collected.
It's hard to believe, but
it's very hard to believe. Before this, they were almost like Nails, like the band Nails, if you can imagine. Yeah. So I asked the other day, just as the Chariot means a lot to me, it means a lot to a couple of other people, and I asked for some people to leave some comments. I'm going to read 3 in particular. One of them is by a person that I know relatively well, Blake Whittaker. He said, as for what the Chariot means to me, it's weird to say that my wife, Bethany, and I both got to experience the end of the Chariot at the beginning of our relationship. He had seen them a couple of times before, but nothing beats that first year or so together in a pit and stage diving and screaming and crying all to the Chariot for the first time. My wife knew some harder songs, but when I came along, we ran into the scene show after show. This scene is so beautiful, and to share something as legendary as the Chariot together, even for its last time, is something that has defined our relationship in a moment that the both of us will never forget. Ty Andrews said, Long Live was tremendously more important for me than a record, Wars and Rumors of Wars. The Chariot had energy like no other band I've seen to date. Just take a look at the infamous Australia house show. Legendary band. And then finally, J.P. Dahlgren said, the Chariot's explosive live performances are what really made me a diehard fan. In 2007, during the Fiancé tour, some friends and I followed them on tour from our home in western New York through eastern Pennsylvania and back up through Ohio. The best shows I've ever been to were all fronted by Scoggin, and I look forward to more unique live experiences with each of his projects. And now, I would like to say something. And this is Cody's piece. The Chariot and their contemporaries, whether it be Norma Jean, Me Without You, Tony Danza, Tap Dance Extravaganza, any band like that, is a pure and prime example of why you should never let fear of criticism, fear of failure, fear of lack of understanding remove you from the experience of making the art that you want to make. The beauty of art, the beauty of creation, is that we translate something that has stirred and stewed inside of us, and we allow it to ebb and flow into the world. So please, I beg of you, whether you like secular music or not, listen to the Chariot, and then start that Herbie Hancock worship band you wanted to do wherever. Start that Scrams band. If you want to start a band that's like The World is a Beautiful Place, do it. But please, I beg of you, the world is so much more of a beautiful place when we have the ability to share and collaborate on art and create these things together. Because for the love of God, we have to walk hand in hand and we have to stand without fear. We're the only things that's keeping this place together. I've been Cody Constantine. This has been my dear friend Mike Kane. This has been Album Fight Club. And thank all of you for your time.